I do want to add that caveat, and I cannot say it enough, that this is a really important week. Um, Hold on, forgot to turn that. There we go. Okay. So this is a really important week, very heavy with the data. Um, I could go over, shit right now, and honestly, because of this week, it could completely change. So I cannot stress it enough that this is not the week to go heavy. This is a week where it should be 100% okay for you to watch, at the very least till after CPI or FOMC. Looking at the economic calendar, there's nothing on the books for Monday. Um, Not really anything on Tuesday. Then Wednesday, we have CPI and then FOMC. That will dictate pretty much how the rest of the week is going to go. Thursday, we have core PPI and then also job numbers on Thursday. So don't think that the volatility is done after FOMCI. All right. Um, with that being said, like I said, anything can happen. Also, do not be surprised if you see, hold on a second. There we go. Do not be surprised if you see that we might have a low volume Monday and Tuesday before CPI on Wednesday as well too. This is the reason why I think Sal also was doing it, and I'm also concurring with it. This is the reason why we are strongly encouraging. I know people still gonna jump into plays, but we are strongly encouraging to chill, right? You don't want to get, especially swing. So I have, unless it's Ford or end phase for me, I have no intention of alerting any swings until after FOMC. All right, so don't expect anything in my channel until at the very least Thursday. All right, this will dictate to me how how the market's going to play out. Then I'll start feeling more comfortable with alerting certain swings. Right now, my theory and what I would like to see happen is I would love to see some sort of corrective activity set us up for some longer term swings. There are a couple different tickers that I'm looking at that I believe have some really good potential. Tesla being one of them. Looking at July or August, somewhere around the 200 mark, giving it time to break through that wall. Amazon as well too. I think either the 190 or the 200. And again, with time, Ford, obviously, you guys saw that I put out for, I think it was the September contracts as well too. So with Ford, because it's such a slow mover anyway, I don't think it's going to absorb like such a big hit if there's corrective activity. It's already, in a range of support. Usually anywhere between $10 to $12 is a pretty good level of support for Ford. So mark that in your notes when it comes to buying shares or dividends as well. Um, but yeah, others, I'm hesitant to pull the trigger on. I mean, I definitely like the way the cloud sector is setting up. I like cybersecurity as well too. Um, I definitely like the way that they're looking. I'm just hesitant to go into swings until we get some sort of corrective activity, right? So looking at futures from a weekly perspective, as you can see, we ended up inside, right? Had a really big volume candle on the Qs, relatively big on ES as well too. And then for the Dow, interesting about them is that we went inside the previous week, inside last week. So this is either going to set us up for a 212 reversal to the upside, or this sets us up for a 212 down. I imagine price was probably going to come back and try to retest that fair value gap after failing this time. So we'll see what happens. All right, cool. Right. So looking at actually, let me get rid of this. There you go. So from a strat perspective, from what I'm seeing is that yeah, we just took out higher highs. Technically speaking, there should be an eventual correction because we did take out higher highs. We may continue to go, but there should be an eventual correction. We're definitely at the top of the range. At the very least, I think either just a lower low at some point is bound to be made. Looking at YM, same thing, except that we didn't make higher highs. We actually made lower lows. So clearly an area of resistance around this level. So if this week, for whatever reason, we push up, maybe before CPI, that might set us up for um, the reversal back to the downside. Qs ultimately are still looking strong. The only thing that I can say is that we're at all-time highs and there's always potential for exhaustion. And I don't imagine that the algos are going to um, continue to buy at premium. You know what I mean? So I eventually expect some sort of corrective activity. More than likely going to be just a liquidity sweep, liquidity grab, if you will, and then we'll continue up. Looking at the daily, I mean, completely inside. What was that? Oh, sorry. We went three last week. I forgot it started. We went three last week. Um, and all of the different tickers, Dow, Qs, and ES. So we'll see which way that goes. I mean, sorry, not last. Friday. My bad. Monday could end up being a 3-1 situation, right? We definitely expanded the range, so it could definitely be a 3-1 situation. Go inside candle. If that's the case, then I'm really going to be focused on the what the next candle provides, whether it be a two up or a two down, and then potentially how that two up or two down candle closes. If it's a two up and it closes more as a shooter, then in my opinion, that candle will end up being a manipulation candle, in which case we'll probably head down. If it ends up being a two down hammerish candle, more than likely we're going to continue up. It is sitting on some support, right? It's sitting on a fair value gap. The three was the test of the fair value gaps. I think we hit consequent encroachment here. Yep, we did. We hit consequent encroachment and then we bounced right off of it. So this could be a potential, bounce back to the upside because again, fair value gap still holding. Same thing over with the Qs. Um, YM Dow definitely has a roof over its head, not necessarily walking upstairs like the Qs and the ESR. So this could potentially, um, be a situation of, the rundown. This is the actual corrective activity. We try to shoot up into this fair value gap, only to fail and continue down. In which case, if that does happen, check out the tickers that are underneath that. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, still looks strong as far as ES and the Qs are concerned. Um, I don't know. Just for me, it's just I get really weary, when I'm seeing price, kind of creep its way up. It's not really getting a lot of heavy volume. Um, Shit, didn't Nvidia get some good news or something? And then they still really didn't even move as well too. SMCI, I think like they have a lot of positive catalysts, and I don't really see them like moving heavy with a lot of volume either. So just be wary. I guess I'm not trying to scare anybody, but just be wary. All right. Anyway, um, actually, let me see. Okay. Yeah, and then taking a look on the 4 hour, what makes me think still bullishness is the fact that again that this fair value gap is still being respected. And on top of that, we're inside of a breaker block. It hasn't displaced back to the downside. What makes me think that we could potentially see some we can see some more downside though is um, we were consolidating here and then we finally broke to the upside after taking out these lows. So might be returning back to the bottom of that range for the 4 hour. Same thing that I'm seeing on ES as well too, except that it's sitting on top of a breaker block. But yeah, we can continue maybe a couple more pushes up. We'll see what it does back at the highs. But if it keeps exhausting around here, which is what it kind of seems like it's doing, like consolidating, try to push up, kind of exhaust, and then ultimately a drop. Keep in mind, I'm not rooting for a drop. Again, I'm ultimately bullish, but a drop, again, it goes back to the simple concepts of what ICT taught in his first in his first couple of videos. What are the algos ultimately trying to do? They're trying to buy at the lows and sell at the highs. We can't continue buying premium, right? Algos are not going to continue buying premium. The banks are not going to continue doing that. Eventually, they're going to want to get in on discount. Right now, the only discount is to go short. All of these shorts are cheap as hell because we're so high up, right? And if they're ultimately bullish, they'll manipulate it to come down, you know, capture their shorts and then get set up for those longs, like I said, in August and September. Excuse me. Sorry about that. All right. So a couple tickers that I haven't had in mind. I don't really have a really long list. So if it's something that you guys want to look at, go ahead and put it in the chat. All right. So again, cybersecurity sector is definitely a sector that I'd say to be interested in over the next couple of quarters, even over the next couple of years, just simply because as the computer world expands and grows, especially with the AI, cybersecurity is going to become extremely more important, right? If you start seeing governments, obviously they're going to eventually flip to start using AI as well too. Obviously that would need some sort of cybersecurity to make sure that AI can't get hacked, etc. So as the chip world grows, then you have to pay attention to cybersecurity as well too. Um, and just remember that as not necessarily sympathy plays, but kind of like obviously they benefit from the same sector, right? From the tech sector. As excuse me, sorry guys. As the computer world grows, AI grows, Apple, Microsoft, all the chip companies, as they're growing off of just this AI boom, obviously cybersecurity is also going to be needed as well too. So I know the month just started, right? But we did get the 122 rev strat on the month. From an ICT perspective, we traded back into this fair value gap. And as you can see, we're using that as support. Filled it twice, could not even displace inside of it, kept bouncing right back out of it. So looks like we're set up to potentially let me change that color because I don't want that. No, that's the wrong one. There you go. Right? So what we're looking for ultimately is to possibly target this monthly call entry of 324. Just so you know, this would probably be a take profit area for some of the smaller swings as well too. Anybody who's jumped in maybe down here, so it might hit this and reject at first, only to continue pushing up. Anyway, looking at it on the month, we got the inside so far, and again, month is still currently going, but focus more on the 122. Yes, this two is not in force. However, it's still a 122 up. We broke to the upside and we're still holding support on this fair value gap. All right. Looking in at the weekly, um, not quite a double bottom, but let's be real, we're pretty much exhausting around the same exact range around this previous high, which I label as an inflection point. So if you again tying them all together, right? On the month, we have a fair value gap. That's this fair value gap here, right? Price comes back down into the fair value gap, again, bounces out of it, And then what we're expecting when it comes back to retest, it's either going to retest the same fair value gap or retest the previous high. What was once resistance should now be support. So, sorry. So, now that price has come back, with that two down, again, wicked below the previous high, didn't displace below it because that's what we'd be looking for to give us a sign of weakness. If it displaced below it, didn't do it. And following week, same thing. So now we end up with the inside candle with a potential for a 2-1-2 reversal back to the upside. So this would be your weekly entry right here at 302.95. Let's say you're trying to swing it, you can take the weekly entry or you can take the daily entry, but you still want to mark out the weekly entry just so you know when price went two up. Obviously, you have to take into account this fair value gap above as well too, this bullish one, excuse me, bearish one, but it is two-sided, right? So it's not all bearish, right? We did get an inside candle while creating this fair value gap, which signals potential weakness on the fair value gap. So it looks like we tried the first attempt, couldn't quite get there. So obviously the corrective activity, and now we're looking to get that 2-1-2 damn. Sorry, guys. Get that 2-1-2 back to the upside. You would think I didn't even drink any water. On the 2 day, because I think, yeah. So we get a new 2 day candle. That's why I was looking at the 2 days, right? So on the 2 day, we actually got the 2-1-2 already. So we're just looking for the 2-1-2 continuation. No fair value gaps along the way, just a little bit of exhaustion. So might find a little bit of resistance up at 311, but if you're swinging for for a long term, that shouldn't bother you as much, right? So looking at the daily, and again, at the daily, we get the 2-1-2, excuse me, the 2-2 continuation on the daily. So overall, again, piecing it together, price came down into this monthly fair value gap, couldn't displace inside of it, displaced back above it, right? We run up, couldn't quite make it up, couldn't quite make it up to the fair value gap, the bearish one there. So we pulled back, right? Get a really nice pullback. We're still making higher lows ultimately. I know we did make a lower low here, right? Um, and so now we're reversing potentially back up to the upside. Some roadblocks along the way, just fair value gap there, and again two-sided, so we're good. Really tiny one here. I don't think that would cause too much resistance, especially if you're going with time. And yeah, I would probably target the 320s. We know that it has an ATR of $9, so I would probably target the 320s for July. Just me, I like giving time. Could it be done in 2 weeks? Yeah, I would say it could. If we're talking 302 to 323, that's a $20 move, 20-point move. Um, so if that moves $20, you move $9 a day. 2 weeks would be, realistically enough time for that to happen. But again, I like giving time, but I'll give you both. Um, oh shit, I thought I had my thinkorswim open. Never mind. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Palo Alto, the 320s for 621. You're looking at um $1.60 is the ask. $1.49 is currently the bid. Open interest is good, well over 4,000. Volumes only at 306. But that should still be enough volume for you to be able to get out of the trade. So I would say that 326.21. And then the July 19th one, that one is asking 590. Volume is 351, so a little bit more volume on that one. Open interest is over 2,000, so I think the volume will probably eventually pick up, but I do like the fact that over 2K are sitting on these calls. Delta's pretty good too compared. Well, I mean it's not the best, but for these high volatility tickers, highly volatile tickers. My bad, that's a tongue twister right there. Um, they, usually have really high theta. This contract is 0.14 on the theta, 0.31 on the delta. So if you can afford multiple contracts, I would probably say go at least two. I don't want you risking your whole entire port. And again, I am talking about this for entry after FOMC because you could very well enter this shit on Monday and it just chops because of low volume. And then on FOMC, what if it ends up being bearish? You know what I'm saying? So add it to your watch list, right? There will be, even if this thing takes off before FOMC, it's fine. It's probably going to, well, more than likely, it'll probably come back, right, to retest these highs up here after it crosses them. Okay, so you will have another opportunity. All right. If you wanna, if you do go early, I would say, do the July contract. At least then you would have some sort of time to absorb the hit and still, potentially bounce back up. All right. Can I please review XBI chart? No, that's a sector for biotech, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's a biotech ETF. Yeah, we can look at it. Hold on. I don't know why all of a sudden my throat is like dry as shit. Let me see. Yeah, 1 second, y'all. All right, so well, clearly there's support here. Should like send an alert for this shit as a cheat code. Like every time price gets like below, I would even say like this low, like set an alert for so that's easy longs right there. Jesus. And this is why honestly it's really good to look at higher time frames. They make shit so clearly. Like just looking at this, obviously I know price is up there, but if price ever comes back to this level and you see it starting to displace back up, hell yeah, this would be perfect longs actually. Obviously, this ain't the only ticker that does that. Okay, so far we went 2-1-2 up, but obviously not in four. So this is what I meant when I said like when people take monthly entries, when monthly entries are taken, those are pretty big on take profit goals or take profit areas for a lot of different trading styles, right? Whether it be day trades or swing trades or whatever. More than likely, whoever got in down here, probably. I'm sorry. Whoever got in down here off of this bounce probably used that as a target. So, in my opinion, this is probably what you just saw. The 2-1-2 to the upside, and then profit taking. So I would not kind of count this out. Um, a little bit of a weaker fair value gap, but when price came back to test, hit the consequent encroachment, and then bounced off of that. So, what we're potentially looking for is a TTO back to the upside. Let me change this. What's the one I'm looking for? There you go. Right. So looks like we're getting ready TTO to go ahead and target that 103.52. That also happens to be in the area of another fair value gap, a bearish one. And just like with this bullish one hitting the consequent encroachment, that's exactly what we did up here. Hit the consequent encroachment, rejected out of it. So now, kind of like ping pong, right? Boom, boom. Now we're coming back to retest. If it fails, then yeah, I'd probably say we're probably going to continue down and possibly make another new low. If it continues up, then yeah, we probably are going to find some resistance back up at the 120s. What's that, 118? Yeah, we'll say 120s, right? Because there's also a fair value gap right above this previous low. which should act as resistance. So um, we'll see how that goes. Looking at the weekly, so again, we definitely took the week up. Came, all in one week, tried to not only take the week up, but then also tried to take the month as well too. So probably, yeah, bound to have some corrective activity after that. Bound to have some profit taking there, but still a 2-2 up, and it actually is still in force. Another thing that I like is that when price came back to test this, um, I guess inverted fair value gap, it bounced as well too. What it hit the 50? Yep, hit the 50 and then bounced, right? So again, you might see a little bit of a pull. Oh, well, that's interesting. Little small one, but that shit's being respected like a mother. Yes, this previous low right here. So honestly, if you're gonna enter long, take note of that. Me preferably, I would want some displacement above this fair value gap because we're talking really one, two, three, four different times that price has tried to get past this fair value gap, hasn't been able to. Maybe fifth time's the charm, but you want to be aware of that. Definitely want to be aware of that. Jesus Christ, that thing's strong. Huh. All right. Looking at the 2 day. On the 2 day, we're still holding support from this fair value gap. So a good sign, right? Doesn't seem like we're gonna get a drop here. It looks like we're gonna, settle in on some support and then use that as, the platform to take off on. So um and that's perfect actually. Tomorrow, if it takes it, then you go 2-2 up, and then you just gotta make sure like tomorrow's candle displaces above this. I would feel more comfortable taking longs once we get above this fair value gap. I would hate to get caught up in that shit. Depends on how long your contract is, but overall, I would say it could go either way. But I do like that. Looking at the daily, we had our first move to the upside. We had the pullback, and so now it looks like we got the second leg up, taking out these highs. So either we pull back a little bit more, but ultimately, I think the direction is still up. Even if we do pull back, it'll just be corrective activity like what we saw in this first move, and then we can continue higher up. All right. Shorting it for this Friday. Well, yeah, I mean, because of what I saw the two down do. So, I mean, I do, I wouldn't be surprised if there's corrective activity. Might even skip over this fair value gap, maybe to come down to this one where there's a stacked order block. So it might be this level of support. But what was I gonna say? But ultimately, I think that's just coming back and hitting support, and then it's eventually going to go. So yes, you can technically get in on that corrective activity. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be a surprise if it did something like that. And then remember that on the weekly, was it that we had that fair value gap as well too? Let's see. Yeah. So they might be shorting it for that reason, that the fair value gap that I was talking about, that area, they might be shorting it for that reason, because again, because of the multiple attempts to try to get and displace above that area, and it's failed. So that's pretty strong resistance right there. So I don't know what they're shorting it to, but I mean, if it were me, I'd probably short it back down to this area, 86.98, where that low is. If it gets close to it, great. If it doesn't, if it blows past it, even better. But yeah, they're shorting 87. Well, what do you know? Look at that. 86.98. So if they're looking to go 80, yeah, 87, which is right at the lows right here. So yeah, if I was shorting it, that's where I would look. So that tells me if they're shortening like that, they're probably focusing on what's happening on the weekly more so than what's happening on the daily. So yeah, very well could be a short, but again, this is the first leg up on the weekly. So yeah, it could very well be a short to come back and retest this fair value gap and see how strong it is, and go from there. No problem. No problem. Is that a head and shoulders? I'm not really good with that, but I don't think so. I don't think that's a head and like this formation. No, I don't think so. I mean, I can tell you what I can see is broadening formations. Boom. So there's definitely, I mean, yeah, there's room to the upside. Obviously, there's also room to the downside. What I would say is if it shorts all the way probably down to this low of 81.14, you got a fair value gap below, plus that's also where a broad information is. That might be a good area for you to go long on it. Just keep that as a mental note. Okay. So I did Palo Alto, the other one, Ford. Okay. So with Ford, right? Right now, currently it's an inside candle. But the thing that gets me noticing on the monthly, or the thing that I'm noticing most on the monthly, is if you pay attention to this range, this area right here, you'll see that price has been holding above $12 over the past 4 months. Every time it's come down, even gotten as low as what, 11.48, it's never closed. It has not closed a month over the past four candles below 12. All right. So, and again, what do we do? We bounced off of a bullish breaker block and we made a leg up. It is still lower highs though. Obviously, we definitely want to see, some higher highs being made. Um, there's also no bullish. There aren't really any bullish fair value gaps, but we do have a potential inversion here, a bearish in a bearish fair value gap that's now that price is back above, it could be flipped as bullish, considering that it's holding support here. So that very well may be what we are seeing for Ford. But the month just began. What I'm really looking for is for the month to be taken up above 1276. That completes not only a pullback into the fair value gap, but then also gives us a 322 rev strat back to the upside. And more than likely, price is probably targeting 1395 or basically $14. Um, I'm choosing the 13 call. It's a slow mover, and I'm choosing I'm sorry, the 1282 call. I didn't want to go 1382, but the 1282 call for September. I want this to be taken out, hopefully somewhere in June or July. And I really want to see here. I want to see 15. That's what I really want to see, right? As you can see, we've been having a lot of ups and downs in that range, like hitting, 15, 16, coming straight down. So I'm basically playing this for price to kind of repeat itself, right? I mean, you've just known ever since this fall, right? Come back down to 10, 11, 12-ish, right? Jump back up to 15. Come back down to, again, 10, 11, 12. Jump back up 14, right? It's been basically bouncing except for this tight consolidation here. But on the monthly, it's been basically bouncing in the same range, right? Until here, where we finally get this dip down into the $9 range. And so what I'm looking for is for, again, these two highs to be taken out. Um, if I can get to 15, mm, if we get to 15 before July 19th, I'm probably going to take most of the position off the table and just let runners run and pray that we can get here to 16, 17, 16 or $17 range. Obviously, that'll take some time. So this trade would be a trade of patience. If you want, the contracts and everything, even though I said it earlier, go into my channel. You'll see it. If you want the full analysis, go into the beginner's chat. I can't remember his name, but he gave a really great analysis on it. Honestly, I would have typed out the same thing, but I'm like, you know what? Let me ask, the beginners, see if they see what I'm talking about. And he really wrote out a great analysis. So definitely check it out. Anyway, coming into the weekly. So looking at again the weekly, right? We um, right around the 50% consequent encroachment of the monthly of that inversion on the month. Now we're looking at price trading back into a fair value gap, tiny ass one, but held it, right? Definitely held it. So, and again, um, you kind of can see the manipulation here, right? It did pop out, manipulated to the upside, came back into this very same range, right? Now it's manipulated to the downside. So ultimately, I'm looking for it to, kind of pop and take itself back to the upside here. But what are we seeing on the weekly? We get the 2-2 reversal. But more importantly, that this week closed above this previous week's close still. Even though this is a red candle, for me, a 2-2 reversal is still a 2-2 reversal. This could very well end up being an order block as well too, especially if the next candle can get displacement above it. So all this would be is yeah, if it turns out that way, then all this candle was basically profit taking from this one probably. We probably had a lot of bulls that got in here, and as soon as we got back up to probably about here, took their profit. So looking at the 2 day, we got the 2-1-2 reversal to the upside, solid candle. So we're looking for that continuation to break through this breaker block on the 2 day. And then on the daily, Nirvana, we got the Nirvana setup. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say on the 2 week. Um, it kind of paints the weekly picture a little bit clearer, right? If you pay attention to these previous lows, you see just like excuse me, just like what I was talking about on the monthly, but you're seeing one, two, three, four, five, six different times that price tried to displace. Oh, I'm sorry, this one's lower. Price tried to displace below that 1194 range and just couldn't do it. Couldn't even get to it. So yes, they're bearish, but we have two hammerish candles with a lot of exhaustion from the downside. So yeah, makes me further think that we might see that 2-1-2 reversal. And then again, like I said, we went Nirvana, so we're looking for the 132 to challenge this high. Um, so if you want, you could probably even, yes, it'll make the contract a little bit more expensive, but if price gets above this level of 1232, you can wait for it to come back and test. Um, and then maybe take that as it bounces. You can take that back to the upside. And again, it'll make your contract a little bit more expensive, but forward contracts are generally cheap. It'll probably just make you reduce the amount of contracts that you get. This is a multiple con play. I would not recommend just getting one contract on it unless your port is extremely small. Um, but if you have a pretty decent sized port, I intend to go 10 contracts or more. I haven't decided yet. I want to see, depends on what the price of entry is, but I want to go 10 or more contracts. All right. Um, yeah, and that's it for Ford. But yeah, like I said, I've been watching it for a pretty good time, couple of weeks now. I think we're, in a pretty good position. Looking at the daily, we've been holding this level of low for a very long time, and it just seems like we just manipulated out of it. Grab that liquidity and then, give us a little bit of bullish pressure to the upside. So again, September. Just remember what the targets are. I'm shooting for a lot longer. My first target is actually going to be this 1395. So this is not going to be one because it's such a slow mover. This is not going to be one that you sit and watch every single day. This is probably going to be like checking on it, once a week or whatever. unless we start hitting targets early. Set your alerts at those targets. And yeah, just let the alerts tell you when to start looking at it. Set your first take profit target and go from there. All right. Um, let's see. AMD. And again, keep in mind these swings that I'm talking about all of them with the intention of entry after FOMC, not during Monday or Tuesday, because again, we could potentially have a very like low volume, nothing's really doing in the market because their market makers are waiting for what happens with CPI and waiting for the CPI data and waiting for FOMC, see what Powell says. All right. One thing about FOMC, if you're new to it, please don't trade it. Just watch. Okay. A lot of people get screwed on that first move because usually that first move is the manipulation move, especially when he starts talking. Also, I would wait until after FOMC entirely. But if you must trade, um, definitely, I would not wait. I would wait until maybe until he's about to close up with those reporter questions because sometimes those reporters be asking him some, off the wall shit that forces him to answer in a way that the market doesn't like. He's pretty much going to say the same things. What you're ultimately looking for, in my opinion, is for if it's bullish, you're looking for him to say, probably keep in line with rate cuts. What are they thinking is going to happen in September, right? So if he answers anything before September, bullish. Shit's probably going to run. We go moon, all right? In my opinion. If he says like anything along the lines of, pushing back the rate cuts or we don't see any rate cuts anytime soon, not even in September, that's probably going to be bearish. Um, yeah, if he says anything like or anything along the lines of there'll be no rate cuts at all this year, anything along those lines, we probably will see some bearishness. Not some, a lot probably. The market will probably bleed, and to be honest with you, that wouldn't be a bad thing because right now all we're doing is buying calls at premium, so that really wouldn't be a bad thing. I'd rather get the shit at discount, if you ask me. Okay, this is one of the tickers that I'm long term bullish on. However, again, I don't want to enter in on this until FOMC. But I'm looking at, I'm looking at potentially a swing involving either 190s, 195, or 200s for AMD. Yes, I believe in it that much. I believe that Nvidia had its run. I believe that AMD is also probably going to come back and make its run as well too. I think it's going to before the year is over. I think we are coming back to retest these highs, right? But the reason why I'm choosing 200 is because this is where the open is of this candle, of this high, and all of this is just pure. Um, it's just pure exhaustion, right? After hitting highs, so I think it's setting up to make its run. It pulled back, not into a fair value gap, but obviously still didn't test the fair value gap nor this high. Right now, inside hammer, obviously that could easily flip. So, monthly call entry, right? And then also just take note of what it'll take to flip it green as well too. So what are we, $4 away from doing that? Yeah. So yeah, right. $4. Well, a little bit less than $4, right? From flipping the month green, and we have a lot of time to do that. So you could probably set an alert and just keep that mental note that AMD on the monthly flip green, and that probably will support any bullish case that you may have. Looking at it on the 2 week, we have a breaker block, a bullish one, that we traded into, filled it, and now it looks like we're trying to displace back outside of it. Actually, we have. I'm sorry, we did displace outside of it. So, looking to use this as a support level to lift off from. Again, 2 week, the 2 week isn't candle isn't closed yet. So this very well could end up being a 2-2 continuation back to the upside. Looks like it just fell short so far um, from, because of this fair value gap. But again, as you can see, the bulls definitely stepped in. I like the fact that we held above the previous low when coming back on that retest. Looking at it on the weekly, pretty much the same things that you're seeing on the 2 week. Again, love that fact that this previous low is also acting as a high here, right? So this tells me that this is a pretty important level for AMD, either either as resistance or as support. And right now, price is above it, so it's going to be used as support. Looking at the 2 day, we get the 2-2, actually the 3-2-2 rev strat. So we're expecting for the 2-2 continuation. In which case, we're probably gonna target a TTO that and then potentially TTO this. Um, we are chewing through a breaker block right now on the 2 day, but if you're gonna swing this on the 200s, the 2 day and the daily shouldn't bother you as much. Um, but yeah, right now we're inside, and again, we had low volume and kind of a little bit of a pullback on Friday. Like so we managed to stay green. So it looks like we're still continuing up. Yeah, for me, um, for AMD, I'll probably zero in more on the expiration of the contract. Probably will be August. If they have, let me see. Let me just look at it now. Yeah, I'll probably take the 200 for August. Um, you could try the July 19th one. It still gives you a decent amount of time. I just like giving time. So the 200 for July 19th is asking 148. So it is cheaper and probably affordable small account wise. Volume's pretty good at 1,200 and open interest about 14,000 there. So clearly something going on there. Again, but if you can't afford it, nothing wrong with giving yourself a little bit of that extra time. Okay. Um, so yeah, I think that's it for now. Like, I don't want to go too in depth. There's definitely other setups in the market. Let me be clear on that. But I don't want to go too in depth on it because again, I want to see. Yeah, Jar, I do. I like it. I'm just again, I'm waiting. I don't want to go too much into too many setups. I'll say I'll probably have more setups on Wednesday. Wednesday when we do our Zoom session there, because at least I'll know, how the market feels about what Powell and CPI data. So then we can have a more realistic look at some swing setups, ones that we can feel comfortable in, and you know, we don't have to worry about too much other like shit getting in the way of it. Oh, there's one last one. One last one. So I think it was Sal who put out what was it, the 10 sector. Actually, let me show you real quick, right? So 10 sector right now on the month is currently inside, right? On the week, we got a 2-2 reversal, right? With the 10 sector. We basically hit up against this fair value gap and said, nah, right? So we did trade back into another fair value gap as well, too. We'll see who wins that battle if we bounce and, keep going up. But as of right now, the way it's looking, I think this fair value gap might get skipped over to come back and come back to this breaker block and this support here, this bullish fair value gap here. At least that's the way I would probably want them to, if I was thinking like an algo, that's what I would want. I'd probably want to come back here, sweep this low. We're still bullish because we haven't taken out this low. Um, all it would just be is just again just us taking out a previous low, and then continuing up. Considering that if we stay above this breaker block, looking at the 2 day, we go 2-1-2 to the downside. Again, even though we have a bullish breaker block, I think I still see some downside for it. Again, just a pullback because you can kind of see what's been happening with price. And then on the daily, we ended up with a shooter on Friday. So again, I know that there's a breaker block here. I know that there's a fair value gap here, but I'm still paying attention to what the candles are giving me. And so far, from what I've seen on two different time frames, when we tried to trade up into a fair value gap, a bearish one, it's rejected and come back down. Now, with that being said, let's come over to end phase. All right. So on this one, I started tracking all the way from the quarter, right? So with end phase, we have the drop, right? And yes, we traded back into a fair value gap and then, bounced off of that, right? So with that being said, though, we've tried twice now to trade back into this bearish fair value gap that was created um, on this downtrend, and so far we have not been able to take that out. Quarter opened up, tried to get up and take out this high, couldn't do it. Really can't even stay above this previous month open as well too so far. So you know, kind of makes me think like maybe we might be pulling back. Um, I also marked out the level if end phase were to drop, where the quarter flips red. Why is that important? Let me skip over to the daily because because the daily, week, and month are all bearish. The only one that hasn't flipped yet is the quarter. And so that's why I marked out that 121.33, because if we, as you can see, we're very close to doing that, we take that, then now we've entered a trade. Let's say we go puts, we entered a trade into full time frame continuity in our favor, right? And that's important. On the weekly, I kept the fair value gap on the quarter. Oh, I skipped over the month. My bad. On the month, right, there are two fair value gaps, one the quarterly one and then also this monthly one right here. And as you can see, we're talking once, twice, three times, four times, five times, six times. Price tried to trade into this fair value gap, and every single time it has not been able to displace um, inside of it, really. It's been kicked out every single time. So apparently, this 132 level is some pretty important resistance there, right? And again, we get the 2-2 reversal to the upside, but what do we end up with? We end up with that exhaustion because we couldn't get to this buy side liquidity on the monthly. So, again, I'm looking for the month to potentially continue down and flip that quarter red, and we'll see what happens next. On the weekly, we actually went outside red. Again, we came up from the highs, we took out this previous high and tried to take out the second one, couldn't do it. Failed in the same area of exhaustion. Same area of exhaustion as these past price points here, these past candles. So again, clearly something there. And when you zoom in, you see it. You see that this is a bearish breaker block with a lot of fair value gaps stacked inside of it. So clearly, there's a lot of resistance there. Um, a lot of selling pressure is there. So and again, we get the 2-2 reversal on the 2 day and then also the 2-1-2 to the downside. But it's ultimately the larger time frames that are making me think that I think there's still some more selling pressure here. So chart it out, but to the downside, if we trigger to the downside, I'm thinking either take the 120 puts or you can go ahead and try to target um, where this fair value gap is. So I would say either the 120 puts or the 115s. If it gets down to 116-ish and you see it starting to exhaust, take your profit. If it goes further and attacks um, sell side liquidity on the quarter at 113, even better, even better than. So, all right. So that's really all I got for now. Yeah. Um, I'm very, like I said, there's a lot of good setups. Sal put out a lot of different sectors to chart. I agree with those sectors. I just don't want y'all to get a bias stuck in your head, and FOMC and CPI completely reverse that shit. All right. So anyway, I am gonna go. I will put the recording in for those who missed. And yeah, peace, love, and chicken grease. I'll see y'all later.